Jamie Lee Ross.
I move that the question be now put.
I'll hear one more. I think we're getting near the end. Sorry, I'll just consult with who has spoken previously. Has Annette King spoken? No. The Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is the first call I've taken on part one of this bill, and I thought that it was important to take a call because I've been listening to the spin that the government's been trying to put on this bill over the last 24 hours. And the spin they're putting on is that Labor is opposed to building houses. Well, I want the public out there to know we are in favour and would vote for part one because even though it is inadequate in many ways, we are the party that wants to build houses. It was Labor who put in place Kiwi Build, and what did the government do? They laughed and scoffed at it and said we don't need a major building program in New Zealand for affordable housing. Interestingly, in 3 years, with the price of houses going up and housing accords being put in place, we now know that the house prices in Auckland but around New Zealand have been going up and up beyond the ability for people to be able to pay. So we know that we need to take measures, and one of them is to build houses, and as inadequate as this part is, we would support it. But I have to say that I am very disappointed in the whole approach that's been taken here in part one. And I go also, as my colleague did, to the regulatory impact statement. And the reason why we are doing this under urgency, and particularly this part one, is because it addresses the fact that developers have had insufficient time to lodge relevant consents and to councils. So the reason why part one is being rushed through, they have insufficient time. When were these brought into being? Well, a very significant date, actually, the 13th of September. The 13th of September, somebody's birthday's on that date, but the 13th of September 2013, 3 years ago, the Housing Accord were brought in under legislation 3 years ago, and developers have had insufficient time to lodge. What they have lodged is land that they want a land bank. They want to ensure that they can ratchet up the price of that land. So why, knowing that this was brought in 3 years ago in urgency, are we now trying to extend it to give the developers more time? I want to ask the Minister, what guarantee has the government got that developers who haven't had sufficient time will now have sufficient time? How many developers have told the government they intend to lodge under the Special Housing Accord? I want to know the number, because for the government to have this in a regulatory impact statement, they must have done some research, they must have done some consulting, they must have done some work. What minister work was undertaken to find out that the developers had insufficient time? And Minister, if you haven't got that information from your officials now, and I know you're only the acting minister in the chair at the moment, I suggest you turn to your officials and ask what evidence that we've got they had insufficient time. What was delaying them? Why were they delayed in putting it in? Did they not think it important enough? Did they think if they waited long enough, the silly government would expand the time that they could do this for another 3 years? And so, Minister, I would like you to get on your hind legs and tell us what evidence you've got that's in this regulatory impact statement, because this is the official regulatory impact statement on this bill. And so I would like to know an answer to that. I also want to know why the government wouldn't accept the supplementary order paper put forward by my colleague Phil Twyford on ensuring that any building in special housing areas have affordable housing. Why would you not include a requirement to have affordable housing? Because all this will do is extend the time for special housing areas and enable people to be able, developers who haven't had enough time, to get their plans ready to build massive big houses, over 2,000 square metres with en-suites and 4 bedrooms that are beyond the price of New Zealanders. The average New Zealander working hard cannot afford to pay that what the cost of houses and the average in Auckland now at $1 million. Suddenly all those homeowners that are the lucky ones at home are millionaires. And there are many looking through the window saying, why can't we afford a house? Why doesn't the government include affordable housing in part 1?
Jamie Lee Ross.